Good morning, everybody. Here we go again. I find myself in a position today on this Friday episode. I'm not going to say creating content that I don't want to create. I'm going to be having a conversation, largely one way because you can't talk back to me, about something that happened recently that I normally would not say anything about. And it's tied to last Friday's episode. Last Friday, I talked about the attack in New Orleans, and I briefly talked about the CyberTruck explosion in front of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. Today, I'm going to focus exclusively on the CyberTruck and the individual that was driving it and the rush to be first that was associated with that and the problem that I see with that. The incident itself, I'll break down how I feel about that after the intro and the ad break. The incident itself highlights for me, and the reason that I'm willing to even create something around this, it highlights a theory of thinking that I am worried more and more people are getting trapped in. And I wanted to share something with anybody willing to listen that has really helped me in my life when it comes to separating truth from potential fiction, objectivity from emotionality, and I'm going to share that. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Before we get into it, please give me 90 seconds of your attention to pay the bills, to talk about the sponsor that makes this episode possible, that allows me to do this, something that's wildly enriching for myself, and bring it to everybody who can receive this at no cost. So let's pay the bills. This episode is brought to you by AG1. Let's go back in time about a year. In the hospital for the first time with a surgery, and for those of you who've never had a surgery, you may not recognize this, they don't let you drink immediately afterwards, or at least they didn't let me. And I found myself feeling like I was in the middle of the Sahara Desert and dying from dehydration. And I remember when they gave me my first jug of water, I told myself that I would never allow myself to feel that way again. And I never paid attention to how much water I drank before that, if I'm being honest. And I probably was walking around wildly dehydrated. And if I'm being totally honest, before that time, I would tell people that I was really concerned about my health and wellness, but I wasn't taking a lot of actionable steps towards that. Since that day, it has been my goal to become violently efficient when it comes to my health and wellness. It is my priority. It is the foundation, and this ties us back into AG1. I start my mornings by drinking water, but plain water is boring. I do it, but there are ways that you can make it better, and why not attack multiple things at the same time? And this is where AG1 comes in. For the last year, in my morning water, what I have been doing is filling it up with a scoop of AG1, and when you order, you're going to get one of these really cool containers. You need to refrigerate this afterwards because there's some live things that are inside of this. I put it into my water bottle, I shake it up, and I slam it because I'm not looking to take 18 different supplements. I'm looking for efficiency and efficacy with what I do in my morning routine. Time is limited for everybody. Why not, with your morning water, have a comprehensive and convenient daily nutrition with 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients made for just about everybody? That's what I'm looking for, and that's what I've done. It's just after the new year. A lot of people start themselves on New Year's resolutions. A lot of people have health, wellness, fitness associated with that. Now is the time to add AG1 to your routine. They have an offer for you. New subscribers get a free $76 gift when you sign up. You'll get a welcome kit, a bottle of D3K2, and 5 free travel packs in your first box. So make sure you check out drinkag1.com/clearedhot. That is drinkag1.com/clearedhot to get this offer. drinkag1.com/clearedhot to start your new year on a healthier note. Let's get back into the show.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun run, north or south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. Get cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
Okay, here we go. I need to do exactly what I did last Friday, and that is I have to watermark or time capsule this episode and discuss what I do know in this moment and what I don't know, because the internet lives forever, and this episode will be around for a long time. And absent that context of what is known or certain and unknown or in question, man, the validity of things coming out of somebody's mouth could really be put into question. So I think it's very important to start with that. It is Thursday, January 9th in the morning. It's not an accident that I waited this long to record this episode, because just like last week when I waited until Thursday, I think I might have done that one in the afternoon, I wanted to at least allow for as much information as possible to come out before I hit the record button. And that's what I did today. But what is known to me and what is unknown to me in this moment before moving forward? Last Friday, there was a loose connection by, I'm going to call it traditional media sources. They didn't directly tie what happened in Las Vegas to what had happened in New Orleans, but they left it out there for people to make up their own minds as to whether or not the two were connected, as to whether or not the two were terrorist attacks. New Orleans clearly was. It has come to, I would say, concrete certainty that what happened in Las Vegas was not associated with and not attached to in any way, shape, or form, even though both of the people involved did serve in the military. It appears that there was no crossover of their time in service. They were unconnected. One had nothing to do with the other. The timing, interesting for sure, but not connected. I think that's a very important part to start with. We know a lot more about the person who was behind the wheel of the vehicle. We have an understanding of their military background. I would say we have an understanding of pretty clearly the mental health space that they were in before taking these actions. And that helps paint, I think, a better picture of, I hesitate to say the why because it's so hard to put yourself in somebody's shoes like that. But as opposed to making what happened very blurry and hard to distinguish, I think it brings it into focus a little bit more. Before I go any farther, let me say this. I can't fathom the difficulty for the family of the man who drove that vehicle. His name is Master Sergeant Matthew Leivelsberger. Just imagine having to not only deal with the death of a loved one, for the parents, a son, a husband, a father. That in and of itself is a valley of darkness that is hard enough to walk through. And you layer on top of that, at least at a national level here in the United States, but I would suspect globally, your name is known for reasons that you would never want it to be known. My heart breaks for this family. I don't have the vocabulary to describe the level of empathy and sorrow that I have for them. This sucks. There's no other way to put it. It doesn't make the situation any easier to deal with, for sure. Like I said, you're already in a pressure cooker, and I guess, I don't know, strap some dynamite to that. Horrible, horrible, horrible situation. My condolences to the family. Let's start there. God, I wish you didn't have to go through this. Okay, who was the driver? Let's talk about this. Well, the military at this point has released, and I'm going to read it for clarity so I don't get any of this wrong. This is the Army's full statement about the driver, and I'm going to unpack this as we go and get to the point of this whole episode here in a few minutes and why I'm even willing to bring this up and talk about it, because it's not actually about this man and about this situation. It's about how we think about these things. So this is the Army's full statement. Master Sergeant Matthew Allen Leivelsberger enlisted as an 18 X-ray. I was never in the Army, but my understanding is this is a Special Forces contract, similar to in the Navy. You sign up and it guarantees you at least a pipeline or a path to the initial selection pipeline for the Special Operations, or in this case, Special Forces pipeline in the Army. And he served in the active duty Army from January 26th to March 2011. He then joined the National Guard from March 2011 to July 2012, followed by the Army Reserves from July 2012 to December 2012. He entered the active duty Army in December 2012 as a U.S. Army Special Operations Soldier, 18 Zulu, I don't know what that is, assigned to the 10th Special Forces Group in Stuttgart, Germany. Additionally, U.S. Army Special Operations Command can confirm Leibelsberger was assigned to the command and on approved leave at the time of his death. That means he went through the official chain of command and process, which is purely a paperwork drill, to be approved, to not be at work, to travel back to the United States. They were aware that he was in the U.S. Obviously, they weren't aware of what his plans were at the time. USASOC is in full cooperation with federal and state law enforcement agencies, but as a matter of policy, will not comment on ongoing investigations. That's fair. His awards include the Bronze Star Medal with Valor, the Bronze Star Medal, or BS, times 4, Meritorious Service Medal, Army Commendation Medal with Valor, Army Commendation Medal times 3, Army Achievement Medal times 2, Army Good Conduct Medal times 5, National Defense Service Medal, Afghanistan Campaign Medal with Star times 3, Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, Non-Commissioned Officer Professional Development Ribbon times 3, Army Service Ribbon, Overseas Service Ribbon, NATO Medal times 2, Special Forces Tab, Combat Infantryman Badge, Parachutist Badge, and Freefall Badge. That last paragraph explaining what all of those things mean is a 2-hour episode in and of itself. I would suggest you go onto Google and look at those things. When I read this, as somebody who spent just under 17 years in the military, I have an understanding of who this person was. I have an understanding of when they served, where they went, whether or not they did or did not see combat, the roles that they may have held. This man was experienced. He was well-traveled. And I'm going to get to the potential consequences of those things at the tail end of the episode. He was not new to the military. He was senior. Having never met the man, I'm going to make an assumption or a guess in both knowledge and experience and rank. He was a master sergeant at the time. This is an incredible military service record. Now, last Friday, I tried to paint the picture that I have no interest in being a provocateur or somebody who is rushing to be first to release information. I feel that way because in my experience in life, if you're going to rush to be first, not in a car race or a foot race or any of those things, if you're going to create content and you are going to be in a rush to be first, if you were to extend the tape measure, on a normal tape measure, the tick marks, you got inches and quarter of an inches and all those things and probably centimeters and weird metric shit on the other side. That's not what is on the tape measure in this race if you're trying to be first with information. What you're measured by is your distance often from the truth. You may be doing your best and you may be reporting the most up-to-date information that you have, but nearly always the first information that comes out is the least accurate. And depending on who you are and the size of the platform that you have, I personally believe that that can be a very dangerous thing. I think that the person who is going to create that content and put it out into the world, especially as your platform grows, has an obligation and responsibility not only to themselves to maintain their integrity, but to the listeners. And in this case, I believe that you have an obligation to this person who chose to take their life to make sure that what you're putting out is accurate. So rush to be first if you want. But for those of you who are listening to this, just remember that yardstick, that measuring stick is often, the metric used is often the distance you are going to be from the truth. The slower you go, and I understand, like there's difference between, hey, there's an incoming terrorist attack and there's aircraft in the air like on 9/11. Probably want to get that information out there. Is there value to rushing on something like this? My personal answer to that is no. Because I would rather take my time and be as correct as possible than rush into something in the hopes of being first and potentially gaining a larger platform or more notoriety from that. That's just my personal feelings. And by the way, everything I'm saying in this episode, I'm not throwing shade at anyone. I respect everybody's decision to do whatever the fuck they want to do. I am talking about how I feel about things. What worries me is some cascading consequences, right? So people are free to do what they want, but there are cascading consequences sometimes depending on those actions. This particular instance had some of those consequences. And there was some pretty wild conjecture thrown out there, which led to what I am going to describe some conspiracy theories around this event. There was reports of China being involved, or this individual at the 10th Special Forces Group being a gateway or a whistleblower and a potential holder of information at national level, like super high up. It would have been buried deep inside of a SAP or a special access program, information that he wanted to blow the whistle on. And I'm going to say this too, for anybody who was reached out to, I'm not saying that this individual didn't write the letters or messages or even believe in his own brain that he had that type of information. So again, those who might have been on the receiving end of this, right, you can't control that. And the person sending that information may have believed it to be incredibly valid. And I'm going to touch on that in a minute here when I get to the critical point of what I'm trying to say when it comes to observing and assessing these type of situations. There was talk about China. There was talk about anti-gravity engines. There were talk about, burner accounts and emails. And like I said, all of those things might be true. And the talk of China and the anti-gravity engines, all of those things probably came through that. But this brings me to my personal question and concern. And that is, why do people want those conspiracies to be true? This is the thing that rattles my brain a little bit that I don't understand. I understand that some of them are very sticky. And I understand that some of them can easily get your hooks into, or can get their hooks into people. But it's optional. You have to participate in that, and you have to allow that stickiness or those hooks to get into you to continue down that path. And this brings me to a principle or a thought process that has served me very, very well in life. And before I say anything else, I'm not trying to insult anybody's intelligence. What I'm about to say is not something that I came up with. This is the way I have thought for the vast majority of my life. And probably 10 years ago, I found the actual description of this, which has existed and predated me by a long stretch. And quite simply, it is called Occam's razor. I'm going to read what this is and explain why I think it is so important. So, what is Occam's razor? This is coming straight off the internet. Occam's razor is a principle of theory, construction, or evaluation according to which, other things equal, explanations that posit fewer entities or fewer kinds of entities are to be preferred to explanations that posit more. If you're anything like me, I don't know what the fuck that means. So I found an easier definition. This one makes a lot of sense. Occam's razor is a problem-solving principle that states the simplest explanation is usually the best one. It is also known as the principle of parsimony. I don't really know what that last sentence means, but I like the first one. A problem-solving principle that states the simplest explanation is usually the best one. If there was something that stood on the other side of the road from conspiracy theories, that was the axis or as close to being the exact opposite from a conspiracy theory, I do believe it would be this approach, the Occam's razor approach. Again, I didn't come up with this. I didn't even understand that the way that I generally viewed things had a name like this. So I am just sharing with people who may never have heard about this in the hopes that you can dig into it a little bit and that it can at least give you a moment of pause when you are presented with information like many people were, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people were in the last 7 days. I think it can help and create a barrier to conspiracy theories. And having said that, I understand why conspiracy theories are sticky. And I also understand, would be the first person to admit, that a lot of times there are or is an essence of these theories that is correct. And I think that's why it makes them so sticky, because you can prove individual pieces of it and it puts you down this pathway where, son of a bitch, well, this is objectively true and that's objectively true. And you can kind of make this leap in an assumption. It's dangerous because if you find a couple that are proven to be true, which of course they are out there. There are examples of those. I think the tenuous place that you end up is, well, shit, that last one was true, so maybe they all are. And I just think that's a dangerous place. I think it makes you very susceptible to manipulation. I think it makes you very susceptible to being driven by emotion, maybe even fear, uncertainty, and distrust. Should you have all those things at some times, depending on the entity or the subject that you're talking about? Yes. But should you have them at all times? I don't know. I think you probably need to find a balance in that. So when this information was coming out, I'm going to explain how I viewed this situation through that lens, and that lens being the simplest explanation is usually the best one. To do that, I apologize up front to everybody who holds the special operations community on a pedestal that is beyond reproach. I hope that there aren't people that truly do that, but I know that there are people who want to. They want people in the military at large. They want to view them in that way. But then if you narrow it down more and you chisel a little more away at that marble, when it gets to special operations, and for people who are not super familiar with these terms, special operations is the entire special operations component and contingent inside of the U.S. military. Very often confused term with special forces, which this individual came from that community, but that specifically means Green Beret. So I'm using the term special operations to blanket all the military branches and their special operations forces inside of that. They want that person on that pedestal to be Captain America. They want them to have perfection. They want them to be bulletproof. They want them to be wearing a Teflon suit at all times where they can do the unimaginable on timelines that are unreasonable and not be impacted by it. And that it just is not the case. So I will be the first to admit my experience in the military gives me a much deeper insight into this particular situation. And that is what allowed me to use the Occam's razor approach to critically think about some of the information that was coming in and not allow it to get its hooks into me. So let's talk about the reality of special operations. Especially during the time period of the global war on terror, and we could argue about when that's started and ended or whether it even actually has. There was no work-life balance for people in those roles. You're either overseas doing your job or you are back in the United States spending almost all of your time training for your job overseas. A lot of the training that we do, you have to travel to do it, whether you're trying to get access to a long-distance shooting range, or maybe you just need to get access to altitude so you can train before you go. Maybe you need access to environmental conditions or specialty schools and courses that are not offered where you may live or where your duty station may be. Maybe you need to link up with joint assets that don't have the ability to travel to where you are. If it's a maritime asset, probably not going to be meeting you in Idaho. If it's a JSOC helicopter-borne asset, they could probably make their way to you, but from a budgetary perspective, it might be cheaper and allow you to do more training if you make your way to them. My point in saying all of this is life in that community is extremely difficult, and it is defined by your lack of work-life balance. Most of the people that I worked with, if not all of them, would never allow the job to suffer first. They would always allow themselves and their personal relationships, and by that I'm talking about their familial relationships, those suffer first. The job never suffers. Are people making that decision as it like they're opening a book and they're checking a box in the morning? I don't think so. I think it was more subconscious. But the level of buy-in exceeds my vocabulary in its ability to describe it. If given a choice to train to the standard to be able to be a razor-sharp scalpel to deploy overseas, or skip a training trip or a deployment to spend time with your family, I'm here to tell you right now, most people, if not all, are picking the former and not the latter. It is a tenuous work-life balance. There is an emotional and physical toll with the job. As much as people think that special operations soldiers look like Adonis and wear, I'm going to use the Marvel Captain America uniform, and they are impervious, that is not the case. Now, there's a spectrum of abilities to burden or bear the burden of the emotional and physical weight that comes with the occupation. But there is a point for us all, regardless of the selection course that you went through, the beret that you may wear, the pin that you may have on your chest, the tab that you may have, the awards that you may have, the color of the uniform that you may wear. There is a point in time where you are going to snap. And I generally describe this in terms of cups. We all have a cup to some degree, right? I'll use this empty container as an example. Maybe that's mine. How many ounces does this thing hold? 450 milliliters? Who the fuck knows what a 450 milliliters? Okay, 12 ounces. Good God. I live in the U.S., people, right? We measure things by football fields, not milliliters. This episode is brought to you by Mando, and I, full disclosure, am really glad that they reached out, wanted to be involved with the show, because they got me with a targeted Instagram ad before reaching out, and I had just purchased and started using some of their stuff. It's essentially deodorant, and if you're anything like me, especially if you're active, I sweat a lot when I'm active. I do jiu-jitsu as much as possible, and just kind of managing the sweat, odor, all of those things, it's a real thing for sure, and I was looking for something new. So it came across my feed, and I like the way they were talking about it. I like the fact that the products are all baking soda and paraben free. I like the fact that it was created by a doctor who saw, body odor being misdiagnosed and figured out a way that you could pretty much tackle it for 72 hours at a time, as opposed to a shower at a time. So I ordered some of their product. So I have some bullet points in front of me, and I'm going to read them because I want to make sure you understand how this product is different and what it can do for you. It's a whole body deodorant, right? There's one thing right there. Most people think of stick deodorant just under their armpits. Safe to use anywhere on your body. Like I said, created by a doctor, clinically proven to block odor all day and control odor for up to 72 hours. There's a solid deodorant stick and a spray deodorant, and that's actually one of the first things that I ordered. I've always been a stick deodorant guy, and I just was curious. I've been using the spray deodorant. It's working incredibly well. So if you're a stick guy, consider switching. If you're a spray guy, I don't know, consider switching too. You can choose from a variety of scents like bourbon leather, clover woods, Mount Fuji, or Pro Sport. How you bottle Mount Fuji, I'm not sure, but it does smell quite good. And it is clinically proven to control odor better than a shower with soap alone. If this sounds interesting, they have a starter pack that might be right up your alley. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice, like a mini body wash and deodorant wipes. I have the deodorant wipes right in front of me literally yesterday. Finished doing jiu-jitsu. I had no time to take a shower in between, was pouring sweat, tried to dry off a little bit on my walk to the studio, got here, wiped down, and was able to continue the rest of my day. Didn't smell like ass, felt fresh, and was able to take a shower later in the night. So this is in my laptop case from here on out, just for those times when you don't have time. And you're also going to get free shipping with that starter pack. As a special offer for the listeners, new customers are going to get $5 off the starter pack with the exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. So you need to use code CLEAREDHOT at shopmando.com. That is code CLEAREDHOT at shopmando.com. The best way to support me and this show is to support the brands like Mando and tell them that I sent you. You can smell fresh, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. Back to the show. I think that's probably a 16-ounce cup. Okay, so if maybe for me, I can hold 16 ounces. When I get to the top of that, it's going to spill over. And the things that lead me to getting to that lip may only take somebody else to the halfway mark in their container. I might snap, and they may not. And I have no understanding for why some people have a size of a vessel that is larger than others, or why they can tolerate more, and why some people seem to have the ability to drain it out over time, which I think we all do, but you need to have an intentional approach to doing so. I think it can happen accidentally, but it's much faster if you are intentional in what you're trying to do. The point in all of that is when it overflows, it overflows. In addition to the emotional, I'll put that in the emotional category, there's a physical burden to your job as well, which in the long run can actually really impact your emotional state, especially when you start losing your physical capability. The job is hard. Necks, shoulders, knees, and backs, I would say, are the biggest issues of the people that I worked with. Because doing this stuff and running around and banging up your body is one thing. When you start to layer on top of that a lot of weight, and I'm not talking 20 to 30% of your body weight, which is kind of the number I've heard thrown around as the acceptable burden or load, physical load that the human body is capable of carrying over a long period of time. I'm talking 50, 60, 70, 80, sometimes over 100% of your body weight, and just beating the shit out of your body, which a lot of times is going to terminate in injuries, rehab, surgeries, back to rehab, back to trying to be operational. And you see people working through injuries that would put most people on the sidelines for the rest of their life. When their body starts failing them, what I have seen at least is they're taking fluid and just starting to pour it inside of that vessel, and it's getting them closer and closer to the top. In addition to those things, the work-life balance or lack thereof, the emotional and physical toll, those lead towards the divorce rate in the special operations community. So I'm going to narrowly tranche this down into the SEAL community because that's all I can speak for, but I suspect this is the same for all communities under the special operations umbrella. I believe the national average right now in the United States is slightly over 50% for divorce. And that sucks. I mean, that's a coin toss in and of itself. In the special operations community, in the naval special warfare community, that number is well above 50%. And, a few podcasts ago, I got a little loose with some percentages in saying where I thought that they were. And I'm going to try to be a little bit more cautious than this. Anecdotally, in my own experience, I think it's very safe to say it's at 75%. I believe it's into the 80s and probably closer to the 90th percentile than the 80th percentile. It is a legitimate issue. The community will not only wood chipper individuals, but if you allow it, it will wood chipper your marriages as well. And it happens. The divorce rate is exceptionally high. There are some reasons for this. One, the time away. Two, and maybe this is a little bit more meaningful than the time away or paired with it. Let's be honest. What type of people want to do that job? They're aggressive. They are overachievers. They could probably scientifically be described as a little bit odd. We're a little bit different. And I say that looking in the mirror at myself. It has taken me a long time to realize that I am perhaps a little bit atypical in my beliefs and who I am as a person than most of the people that I surround myself with in daily life. It's not a bad thing, but I think it's important to recognize. Personally, I still believe I'm the most normal person that I've ever met. I've been told by enough people that I have met that that isn't the case, that I'm at least questioning that. But I still think I'm pretty normal. They're not always the best behaved. They don't always make the right decisions. There are absolutely issues of substance and chemical abuse, and there are absolutely issues of people acting like every ounce of the man whore that nobody would want to think happens in that community, but it does. That is not a statement applying to everybody, but anybody who comes from this world knows exactly what I am talking about, and we'll leave it at that one. That's the lens that I view this situation from. And just like I started this episode, my heart breaks for this person and this family because I understand how he got to the place that he did, and it has nothing to do with a conspiracy theory. It has everything to do with what I just described, the realities of the job, the work-life balance, the emotional and physical toll that it takes, and the relationship strain that can occur from that. It has come out that this individual, by other people's words, not my own, may have been struggling with mental health. He may have been in the throes and in the middle of a mental health crisis. And quite frankly, that to me makes the most sense. Somebody's brain starts to misfire and they get to a place where they think that the reasonable solution is to load a vehicle with fireworks, drive it to the front of a hotel, kill themselves, and then detonate those fireworks. Using the Occam's razor approach, that is, quite frankly, the simplest explanation. That is far simpler than people talking about a body being killed because they were getting ready to be a whistleblower due to emails and messages that were sent through burner accounts. The body being killed before, stuffed inside of a Tesla CyberTruck, putting it on the autopilot, and I don't know the exact terminology, but something like that, autonomous driving mode, whatever it may be, programming it to arrive at the front of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas and detonating remotely. Now, if you do some research, yes, the vehicles are capable of self-driving to a degree. Are they capable of that level of sophistication? I'm not sure, but in the research that I have done recently, it would be difficult because there are safety mechanisms that are in place to make sure that the driver is alert and aware, right? You're not supposed to be handing over the vehicle complete autonomous control without at least driver input and attention. The simplest explanation to this is that this man, because of the life that he chose, found himself in a place where his cup overflowed and it had catastrophic effects, as it does often in the community when that happens. And there's one little flyer detail that was associated with this that people really hooked onto. And that was there were reports that the DNA from the body in the vehicle didn't match the DNA from his child. Now, I'm a fan of the TV show CSI as well, and I appreciate in a 44-minute episode they can solve very complex cases and get results back on very complicated scientific methods and data within that 44 minutes. Usually it's within like 5 to 10. And the people I know who work in this world, that's not the case, right? It's measured in days, if not weeks, if not months to get that information. Even a high-profile case, it's probably going to take a bit. People latched onto this one almost immediately, and it was sticky. That concept was sticky for people. They wanted to attach themselves to that. And again, I'm going to go back to Occam's razor and my own personal experience on this. Narrowly tranching this again back into the SEAL community. I know of, I'm not going to say a lot, but I know of enough people who have had horrendous dynamics in their relationship with their significant other that terminated in both, at least one, but oftentimes both, straying from the vows of their marriage. Sometimes when that happens, for anybody familiar with the birds and the bees, which is a total side note that has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Is there anybody else out there who is fascinated when somebody announces that they're pregnant and they say we don't know, I don't know what happened? I mean, I'm pretty sure I know what happened. I could tell you what happened. I could help you with that if you want, because it goes back to the birds and the bees. Well, if men and women are playing birds and bees, sometimes they get baby birds and bees. In this instance, the simplest explanation as to why the DNA may not match the child is that he would not be the first person that I am aware of, again, specifically in the SEAL community, that is raising a child as his own that isn't. Are they open and vocal about that? Almost always not. But that is a far more likely explanation than somebody being snatched up by a government entity or an entity high up in our intelligence infrastructure and coordinating this whole affair of this is how we're going to do it, this is where we're going to do it, but he's going to be dead first, all of these things. And there's another layer into this as well, too. I get really weird emails, not every day, but every week. I mean, I'm talking emails from people who claim that they are in government testing facilities and that human research is being done on them, and they want me to email whoever it is in charge or do what I can to turn off a device that they will list like a name and a frequency and a number with. And the reason that they're there is because they hold information and they have information that they are unwilling to provide to that government agency, but they want to share it with me. And I read these emails, and some of them are a little bit shocking. I almost always, actually I always do up to this point, land on, I feel really bad for the person sending it because it's clear they're having a mental health break and crisis. It is possible that this man, being a part of special operations for close to 20 years, was read into some special access programs that could have peripherally included China and anti-gravity and all of those things. But if you take a second and you take a step back, anybody with experience in this world would realize that's really, really unlikely. Because it's not going to be a master sergeant in the army stationed in Stuttgart, Germany, that's actually going to likely be the holder of this information. That is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? No. It is improbable. You know, he probably had a TSSCI clearance, as I did when I was in, and there are clearances above that, and I believe TSSCI is category 1, 2, 3, and 4. Who knows? As you get into those categories, you start getting read into programs. I was read into 2 programs, neither of which blew my hair back. I'm not saying that there aren't ones out there that wouldn't blow your hair back, but I was never exposed to, and this is while I was at a JSOC command, I was never exposed to programs or information rising to this level. If there is a program that is at that level, it is going to be so high up in the infrastructure of the military industrial complex and our information gathering apparatus. I feel it's exceptionally unlikely that this individual in this place, in this role, would have access to that. And anybody who came from the military should know that. And it should, at least as you're rushing towards that line to be first, hopefully give you some pause, because what good comes from putting out that information if shortly thereafter it's just proven to be not true? Now, the person writing this email in the middle of a mental health crisis might have thought it was true, and maybe that was just something that they said to try to get the attention of the person they were trying to get the attention of. I'm not going to fault them for that. Actually, fault is not the right word to use. That might have been their motivation, but the person receiving those emails, take a beat, take a breath, take a second. That's how I view this particular situation. That's why I didn't rush to say anything about it. And that is honestly how I view almost every situation in my life. I don't understand why some people want conspiracy theories to be true. Is it they're living a more mundane life and they want to have a little bit more sensationalism in their life? Do they want to believe that there is this entity out there that is trying to lie to them and control them and manipulate them, because then they can say, well, it's not in my control, so they don't have to worry about it, right? It's this handing off of responsibility to them. I don't know. Fortunately, with the podcast, I'm able to talk with people who are experts in the brain, and the next time I do, or if somebody's seeing this is an expert on the brain, please put it into the comments. Why do people want conspiracy theories to be true? What is it that makes that the case? I don't understand it, because although I agree and admit that sometimes they are true, I don't want them to be true. I'm not looking, I look at them critically and objectively, and I view them through the lens of what I've already covered in today's episode. And it helps me separate the wheat from the chaff. It also gives me a moment of pause before I take action, because I look at these things and I ask myself, this is what's being said, but is that realistic? Is there a more simple and reasonable explanation? Shouldn't I take the time to find that out? And that's what I want to leave people with. Hopefully, if you have heard of Occam's razor, I apologize for wasting your time. If you haven't heard of it, take a look at it. And the next time that you encounter something like this, maybe just take a beat, literally, metaphorically, take a breath, sit down, and work your way through that simplest approach, as opposed to emotionally attaching yourself to the more flashy approach. And that's all I have for today, other than to end it with, again, My condolences to the family and anybody impacted by this with the cascading downstream effects. The death alone would be hard enough. The public nature of it, I can't even imagine. So my heart goes out to you guys, and that's all I have for this Friday. See you next week.